Cool. So Matt, what role are you applying for?
I'm a narrative designer by profession. So I write for games, and that's what I'd like to do.
Cool. Tell me a little bit about like what's involved with that and like some projects you've worked on.
Sure. Well, I started back in the game industry in 2000, working on Dragon Magazine and Dungeon Magazine with Wizards of the Coast.
Ooh,
Since then, I've worked on D&D and Magic the Gathering and board games and miniatures games. More recently, I've worked on um, narrative design for Destiny 2
whoa.
and also some for a game called Blaze Sky, which is sort of like uh, an asteroids RPG, which is really kind of fun. But yeah, so right now I'm doing some freelance and consulting work, and this seemed like a really interesting project. I love the aesthetic, so that's why I got involved.
Awesome. So wow, it sounds like you worked on like a whole different range of projects, like board games, video games. Um, so what is your like, how do you choose the projects you work on or like and then once you're on a project, what is your like process like?
Uh, I guess it varies. Process varies a lot,
Right.
depending upon the project and its goals and so on and so forth.
Mhm.
But as far as choosing a project, gosh, I mean, it's just something that interests me. I mean, I got into the game industry because I want to have fun when I work, and so I choose projects because it looks like it's going to be fun. Um, the process for creating things, gosh, uh, I mean, everything always starts from um, two things, I suppose. One is what are the uh, sort of requirements and possibilities of the platform, and the other is sort of what element of that property or IP is something that really interests me. And then I guess the third thing is like, what are the sort of unique things from my background and history and interests and so on that I can pull into that, and that kind of spins together to create whatever it is that I'm making.
Cool.
Uh, and so that's sort of the process, I guess.
That was a great answer. So yeah, let me tell you a little bit about myself and the project, and then I just like to get an idea of like what you already know about the project. So maybe you've seen the name DVNC Tech a few places, but essentially that is the company that is making the or developing the game. So I'm the lead developer for DVNC Tech and for this Monochrome RPG. And so we've been working on it for probably about a year now. Um, and yeah, it started out with a couple of the founding members in the Discord coming to us with the idea for this game, but they were just starting school to be game designers. So they didn't really have the experience or know-how because it takes a while for you to get to that point in the education system. And so what we did was, while we were making the game, we also made this kind of book of resources and like guides on how to make art and animations in this style. And they started sharing that with their friends, and we just got a bunch of people contributing art, and then we started opening that up to people that wanted to make music in this style, and just really like honed in on this idea of a collaborative, crowdsourced game. Uh, and so yeah, Monochrome RPG was kind of the impetus for this workshop, because the game itself is very much about like empathy and community, and so the themes of the game really paired well with the idea of the workshop. And so that is, yeah, that's kind of like the overall story of both of those. And so, other than what I've just told you, what do you know about the RPG? Have you gotten a chance to play the demo?
So I tried playing. I have a Mac, and I tried playing the
Ah,
demo, and it wouldn't work for me.
yes,
Um, but I
that
have
was
seen
my
people play the
fault.
demo online. I watch videos on YouTube and stuff like that of folks playing it.
Awesome.
So I have a general gist of the at least the mechanics that I saw, as far as sort of using puns to kind of combat or persuade characters, and the character moving around and the environment and so on. What intrigues me beyond the setting, which I love. I love the idea behind the setting of these, the cartoon style and so on, because it's very much something that I remember watching, not obviously in movie theaters in
Yeah.
whatever, in 1930s. I don't even know what period that is.
Yeah.
Um, but like when I used to watch the Disney Channel, they would oftentimes put those things on, or they'd be spliced in with other specials and stuff like that. Like one of my favorites of that style is some of the old Disney Halloween things and
Oh,
Christmas.
yeah. With like the
Just
skeletons playing on their ribs and stuff like
yeah,
that.
and then
Yeah.
there's a bunch of really great ones with Santa Claus that aren't Disney. I don't think. I think there are some Fleischer. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean they're just enormously fun, and I love that the idea behind creating a world of those characters and using the sort of music of that kind of cartoon and the period to kind of create something really interesting.
Cool.
The thing that I'm a little foggy on is the overarching narrative of the game. Like, what, I mean, I get that it's trying to say something about community and society and so on, but like, and so there's sort of an inherent optimism in the character, uh, but like, how how will that sort of thread of what the narrative is be maintained in a crowdsourced game where you're going to have dozens or hundreds or thousands of contributors?
Yeah. So so your question is like, how does the tone and the theme remain the same, or
The
the voice, I
the
guess?
the tone and the voice, and then ultimately, the theme, like the message of the game,
Hmm.
uh, and then I noticed that you've put out a call for people to create villains, and there's calls for various storylines and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
does the game have, what's the scope of the game, or is it meant to be a platform that's sort of built on endlessly?
Right. Yeah. These are great questions. So there's a lot of moving parts right now. So I'll start with the kind of call to create characters. Um, so that is more of just like a creative competition. Most of the assets and characters that people are going to create aren't going to go in the game. The only things that could go in the game are the people that come in first place. So that definitely narrows down like the number of submissions and like different characters there. But let me go over the writing process. So what we have is we have like the people that have came up with the story. They're kind of like the script supervisors, and then we have somebody writing the actual like overarching story, which is going to be split into 3 episodes. So we have the beats that are going to be hit in each of the 3 episodes, and right now we're only working on episode 1, but we do have like the story for, or the overarching narrative for episodes 2 and 3. Um, And so where all the writers come in is primarily writing quests. Since it is an RPG, there's going to be a lot of side quests necessary. And so those script supervisors and like head script writer, they are going to be in charge of all the people writing, all the people in the workshop that are writers. And so what we'll have you do as a writer is submit drafts. So as soon as you leave the lobby and join the main workshop, what we'll have you do first before you get a contract is just write a spec essentially. And it'll be super short. Just want to make sure you've got the tone and like the voice correct. And then once that's approved by the head scriptwriter or the kind of script supervisors, then we will give you contracts that'll be like, you have these assets to work with to create a quest. These are assets that artists have made already. They're going in the game, and we want them to be a part of a quest. And so you will create a quest around those assets. Does that make sense? And does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It certainly limits the scope of what creators can do in the sense, writers can do in the sense of like, you know, they can't sort of spin up castles in the air and make things that the game can't achieve, obviously, because you've
Exactly.
sort of limited the assets. And then it tends to draw the design towards particular ends based on the assets that they're given.
Yeah, so that's actually a good point. Another thing that I forgot to mention is the location and the setting will have full maps of the locations that the quests will be in. So you don't need to worry about like coming up with those like floating castles or what have you.
Right. And so I can imagine that the first few of those types of quest design things might be pretty easy to spin up, but by about the fourth or fifth one, where you're sort of given a random set of things, give a story to this, that would be kind of frustrating if it didn't have sort of a narrative implied. Something along the lines of like, here's a bunch of angry bugs and weird furniture in this location. Here's another bunch of angry bugs and weird furniture in this location. Give us quests for these things. Mm-hmm. Is less of like that becomes challenging to do something interesting with, given the tools of how the game's stories are told over and over and over again, than something like here's an animation of a character and it's like a little angry fire, like little flames with arms and eyes and stuff like that. And then like, here's a building and it's like, okay, the building's on fire and you got to go put the building out. What's the story of how the building got on fire? And then like, how do you, to convince the fires to go away or whatever, instead of just, or there are special tools that you can use to, mm-hmm. put the fire out. Can you bring along your water buddy to put out the fire? Well, we don't have a water buddy as an asset, so the answer is no. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of like, interesting ways to sort of build that or come up with things. So to what degree, like how are the assets being created and assigned to create those side quests, I guess, is the question.
Yeah, so essentially So we have the assets kind of grouped based on location. So it's kind of, we imagine like a playground for the writers. So we'll have all the assets. They can be reused among like different quests. So it's not like a problem if, one person has a farmer have you pick apples versus a baker have you pick apples for a pie. Like the pie one could be like an extra step. And that is another aspect of what we're planning to do with writers is the quests will be different lengths essentially. So you could potentially have a main quest, or you could have a shorter side quest or a medium length side quest. And in any case, we'll provide you specific details about like the assets you can use. And yeah, that's pretty much, and the characters as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I didn't really get a sense in the game of what, besides progression through the story, is there a sort of reward structure in place for the player, or is it really just sort of wandering around into the different stories and doing the quests because that's sort of the function of the game, and it's fun to sort of see these little stories play out?
Yeah, so there's definitely going to be a reward system. I would say the primary reward system is this like relationship system that we're setting up, where there's different factions, and each faction will have like interlocking relationships with Auto, and that kind of extends into the battle system. So, like for instance, if you're in the valley area, right, and you've done a side quest for a squirrel, you've done a bunch of side quests for squirrels, and you go to fight the punky pine, which is like a tree enemy we have. In the battle system, part of what you want to be doing is entertaining your opponent. So if your opponent is part of a faction that you've done a lot of quests for, it'll be easier for that opponent to like you, and therefore the battle will be easier. In addition to that, there will be like actual rewards, like items that'll help you in battle, as well as like items that progress the story.
Gotcha. Okay.
These
Well,
are some great questions.
that sounds pretty cool. All right. I mean, I guess I get a sense of what the tasks will be like and how it'll all work. Do you have something along the lines of a style guide or for writers? I mean, obviously you have something along those lines for artists at this point. Do you have that for writers, or a world guide, that kind of a thing?
Yeah, we do have a world guide. So if you check out in the Discord, I believe there's a like kind of game info channel. Let me see, is that what it's called? Yes, game-info. There's a bunch of docs in there that are just constantly being updated, and there's like the Monochrome societal AI. There's the design doc, as well as like, yeah, just a lot of really good info within those docs that go over like the locations and the characters and the overarching story.
Systems design, battle and development. Okay, great.
Yeah, and so those are just constantly being updated. And then, yeah, so like we haven't started onboarding writers yet. And it sounds like you've got like a lot of good perspective. So as we get closer to onboarding writers, like early June, I would definitely love to get your feedback on some of the systems we're implementing for the writers.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I mean, definitely um, especially if you're going to be dealing with a large number of contributors who have different backgrounds and so on, are coming at this game from different perspectives. It's super helpful to have a style guide, not only for just like what the tone and tenor of the and themes of the writing are, but also just like basic do's and don'ts, which honestly, oftentimes it really feels like you shouldn't have to tell people, but you really should still tell people, you know, don't include themes of rape. Like, don't,
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, we
you know, a lot
actually,
of that stuff, which seems like basic, like human, you know,
right.
interaction things that it just feels like really we shouldn't need to cover these things. It's really helpful to still have a set of guidelines that really tells people, okay, here's where you know, the hard lines are in storytelling, and here's where things get a little more fuzzy. Like, and it might even be something where it's helpful to provide examples, right?
Mhm.
So, you know, if we're doing horror, we're doing horror like this Mickey Mouse, you know, or, you know, cartoon, or this Disney whatever thing, right? Like, it's never going to be Freddy Krueger, right? Like,
Yeah.
um, so you know, or like, you know, what does scary look like in this game, what does mean look like in this game, because you know, there's a big difference between, say, the tone of early Mickey Mouse cartoons, the tone of Itchy and Scratchy, and the tone of Popeye stuff, right? Like, there's some stuff in early Mickey Mouse, the black and white cartoons, which is kind of like, oh, that's, I'm not sure that flies today. You know, like
Right.
Minnie Mouse getting her dress pulled over her head and punched her in the face. Like, no, like, uncool. You know, but like Itchy and Scratchy takes those kinds of things, and, you know, Tom and Jerry and stuff like that, and like just goes way beyond that. And similarly, there's stuff in like us, you know, old Popeye things where olive oil is just treated horribly and so on. So it's like,
Oh
okay,
yeah, we are. That has been a big topic of discussion. Is uh, we have a
yeah,
character named Damsel, and we wanted her to be like seem like a stereotypical damsel in distress, but not be a damsel in distress. And that is a very hard line to toe, because you don't want it to come off initially as like just another stereotype. Um, but yeah, these are very interesting
yeah.
points.
So it can be, I mean, especially like if you reference a lot of these old cartoons, you know, some of them come with significant baggage, and
Yeah.
uh, you know, it's important to avoid some of the pitfalls there with folks, so that they know what's not okay. Uh,
Yes. Absolutely. And that is definitely like something we want to make sure happen, or make sure doesn't happen. Especially because one of our big themes is empathy and like community. Like those concepts really, uh, if we don't have the other perspectives, it's easy for those issues to arise. And so uh, having that as a main theme really allows us to focus on not letting things like that happen, like not having like stereotype caricatures uh, that were definitely present in these cartoons back in the day.
yep, yep.
Cool.
Okay, cool. Well, that sounds all super interesting. Yeah, I'd love to be involved. I mean, I think if I can write samples or whatever you need me to do to help out. But if you're waiting to onboard folks for writing until more in June, that's fine by me. I have some other things on my plate right now that I'm trying to deal with. So
Cool. Have you checked out the character bout?
the character bout, not the villain one, character bout.
Yeah, so villains are a part of it, but it's just like an overall kind of creative bout that we're hosting in the lobby. It's
Okay.
just like that opportunity to submit a writing sample or work in a team and create a
So
character.
I have to be 100% upfront, clear with you. I have used Discord before for work, but I am not a Discord user by habit, and
No,
so
I totally feel that. It took me a little bit of time to get it into my system as well.
so I have not yet grokked how to really follow. Like sometimes I tune into some things and it's like, wow, there's like 5,000 comments here. I don't know what's important.
Yeah, exactly.
So okay, I will try and be a little bit more up to date on that stuff, and put a little bit more of that in my docket as things that I need to pay attention to. So that
Yeah,
the
I would
next time
say
we have a conversation.
the main channels to pay attention to are like announcements. Um, yeah, honestly, announcements is the main one, and then game info is kind of just a resource guide.
Okay, great.
Questions is also pretty handy, but yeah, chat just gets like out of hand. Cool. So I have a few more questions.
Sure.
So my last question about the game itself. Have you ever seen anything like the game or like the workshop?
Seen anything like the game? I mean, obviously the game has at its root a lot of the sort of simple dungeon crawler type games from when I was a kid, but as far as its tone and its characters, there's something tickling my brain from several years ago, like maybe a decade ago, that was more of a platformer.
Are you maybe thinking of Cuphead?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think that's what I was thinking of. Yep.
Well,
But I didn't never play that.
What about like the workshop? Have you ever seen anything that's kind of like the workshop?
Insofar as like using Discord and so on?
Yeah, using Discord, crowdsource, kind of like
Yeah. So
if you could compare it to things.
so not crowdsourcing as such, but it's sort of like that. All of those sort of like choices and so on, all those romantic games. They're like iPhone games where you like they're sort of choose your own adventure romance games, and it's like choices and things like that. There's a ton of them.
Kinda, yeah. I think I know what you're talking about. They're like usually anime characters.
Yeah, and it's largely about problematic depictions of women
Yes.
choosing their outfits.
Yeah.
And for some reason they sell a lot of money or sell a lot of units, and so the studios that make them are very profitable.
Yes.
Anyways, there's one of those that is trying to do that but be less problematic, and I don't know to what degree it's succeeding financially or otherwise, but it's called Tales.
Tales.
And Tales is in telling a story, but I think the icon for it is a foxtail, and they are doing a number of sort of choose your own adventure / interactive novel type titles, and they use a Discord system to interact with authors and have chats and general questions and so on and so forth.
Whoa, this is the first I'm hearing about this. Very cool.
Yeah. I don't think I have that. Let's see if I. No, I was briefly considering working on that with them, but the amount of work for the amount of reward, the ratio was just too off. So,
interesting. So what is
okay.
that ratio exactly? Like, how much do they have you writing?
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing was that it was a small amount of remuneration for a large amount of writing, but then in theory, there's a profit sharing element. And so, however much your particular book or whatever sells, you get a portion of the profits that they make from the sales.
Mm.
But it was a portion of the profits they make from the sales after they've invested money in the book for editing and art. So, if it costs them, say, $10,000 to put art and edit the book, I'm not sure it would cost that much, but let's say it did. You wouldn't make any portion of money from sales until after they'd been paid back that $10,000.
I see.
And then you'd only make your sort of slim margin on top of their profits.
Right.
And so, like, I got pretty far down in the weeds on that, and I was like spinning up this whole thing and going to make this whole story world and so on. And I realized, you know what, I mean, I might not make more than $100 off this ever. I've already spent so much time on this
Right.
that it's just not worth it. So
okay, that's really good to know. I'm definitely going to check that out.
yeah,
and you're like one of very few people to give me an answer for have you seen something like the workshop? So that's super helpful.
I forget the process, but it was relatively easy to pitch them an idea and just get on their Discord channel, because they're pretty hungry for writers, as I recall, at the time anyway. And so, I mean, even if you weren't going to write for them, I'm pretty sure you could just get on there and take a look at what they're doing. But yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so I have like a couple more questions for you. More so about like what you want to be doing and like professionally and personally. So like in 5 years, kind of where do you see yourself?
Sure. So I'd like to be on a narrative design team for a AAA, digital title. I've done some work on that like that in the past at Wizard of the Coast on some projects that turned into vaporware. I got to work on Destiny 2 for a while on a contract basis, and that was really fun. I'd like to work for a title that is a bit more narratively focused than Destiny 2, and to do that kind of work. In the past, I have managed people and led teams. I don't think that's really my forte. I can do it when necessary, but I much prefer to kind of actually be doing the creative work itself. I tend to have a pretty good grasp of forest versus trees, and so I can be sort of the narrative designer who sees the forest and helps other people plant trees. But I prefer to do that on a team as opposed to as the manager of folks who tell other people what to write.
Cool. So how do you see like the workshop kind of helping you towards that goal?
Well, for me personally, it's uh, I mean, it's something to just sort of put on the resume as when the game comes out and be like, hey, look, I did a thing, and it's this cool little game, and it'll be another digital title that I contributed to. So that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, it's a really interesting sort of little world, and so I'm kind of just intrigued by the possibility of storytelling and the style of storytelling that it creates, because I don't really feel like there's a lot of that there really is much out there like that. So that's kind of why I'm interested in the project, is not just that it's a crowdsourced RPG. It's this particular style.
Awesome. Well, I've kept you long past the amount of time this was scheduled for, and I really appreciate that you were talking to me about all these things. So I will let you go. But it was super nice to meet you and like hear your perspective. And yeah, I will definitely reach out to you in the future. And if you have any questions before I go, feel free to ask them now.
No, I think that's it. I will definitely sort of try and dig a little deeper on the Discord channels and so on. And I look forward to hearing from you in the future.
Great. All right. Well, have a good rest of your day.
All right, you too. Bye.
Bye-bye.